Alrighty guys, let's talk about what can the build do. I suppose in short, we're going to go with everything. Absolutely everything. And when I say everything, I don't just mean like every bit of content in the game, I mean every map mod included. So we can run Reflect, we can run no regen, we can run no leech, we can run hexproof, we can run absolutely everything. The build is made in a way that pretty much nothing affects it. It can also do every single boss in the game deathless. I actually have videos of all of that. It's fantastic at all of these things, and you know, to boot, I'm still not perfectly min-maxed, unfortunately. Like, the gear I want just doesn't exist. I've obviously been trying all League to get it. You know, I got a couple of mirrors just sitting there, just waiting and waiting and waiting. A lot of double corrupts, a lot of double corrupt attempts. I might even show a little video at the end of it with me failing a whole bunch of double corrupts, unfortunately. Just, yeah, I suppose the biggest thing holding me back right now from getting even more damage, and I'll put this into the POB and stuff like that, is the fact that the gear just simply doesn't exist, and people aren't building, they're not really building their character this way, which is like a huge flaw. So unfortunately, I don't have like a lot of samples to go off. It's pretty much just me sort of building this way. I will show why it's more optimal to do things this way as opposed to some of the other ways. I'll go over like the low life versions and things like that, other ones that I've tried, where the sort of flaws are. I suppose the biggest flaw for a lot of these builds is the fact that they might be particularly good at one thing, but they suck at all the others. You know what I mean? Like, there's guys out there that have like a really fast 4K good map clearer but couldn't boss to save its life, any sort of immune phase, any sort of reflect, really bad build. Anyway, then there's other guys out there that are like, I've got 10k ES, but I hit like a wet noodle and I also can barely do the map. Any sort of map modifiers throw me out and stuff like that. There's so many of those that unfortunately people are like, this is the best way to do the build. I'm going to sort of debunk a lot of that, hopefully, and hopefully you guys appreciate it. There's a lot of work and research that went into all this sort of stuff. And as boring as this video is going to be, because there's going to be a lot of showing you mathematics, showing you how it works, putting it in a POB, and showing you the actual numbers, I hope you guys bear with me, because you will learn something, because I can't imagine that everyone actually knows this sort of stuff. I know I hear it all the time. I know every time I put up a video saying, hey guys, just so you know, this is the thing, and then I get a whole bunch of people that sit there and go, I already knew about that. Well, if you did, you wouldn't have been copying that guy's POB. So anyway, I'm just going to try and correct the record about a lot of kind of myths. I don't even know what they are right now. They're misconceptions about Ice Nova and how cast on crit works, and we're going to start off with the mechanics. I know it's a little bit boring. Please guys, just watch this thing. Put your hate for me aside for a couple of seconds and just watch the video. You will learn something, man. And I can tell you right now that not a lot of people do know about this stuff, because go check the PoE Ninja after this. Go through all the guys that are like level 100. Go through all the guys that have the best POBs out there, and you're very quickly going to realize that some of the flaws I show are immediately, seeable. And this includes some of your favorite streamers, unfortunately. It's not that they're going out there spreading misinformation on purpose. It's not an attack on them at any point. I'm trying to fix the misinformation about this build. I'm trying to show you why those builds suddenly suck in maps out of nowhere. I'm going to show you why they can't do bossing when you do it a certain way. I'm just going to show you the actual numbers. That's the big thing I want to do, is I just want to show you what a real POB looks like. It's not going to look fancy. It's not going to say 500 mil damage or something like that. But then you see it in actual practice with gameplay besides what I'm saying, and you're going to go, he does have more damage than me, but it looks like less on POB. What's going on? And then hopefully you guys understand by the end of it exactly what is going on. So good luck, guys. Try and enjoy the video if you can. If not, at least take the information for yourself and then just tell other people. At the very least, if you hate me and you don't like my videos, that's fine. But take the information and spread it throughout the player base, because this stuff is just not common knowledge, despite what everyone says. So please, just spread out the knowledge, guys, and have a good one. Start with mechanics. So I think the biggest thing is going to be cooldown recovery speed and balancing it out with your attack speed to get procs. I've seen a lot of the PoE Ninja. I obviously follow a lot of build guides. I tested out a lot of what people are doing and saying and stuff like that. But this is one mistake which I actually couldn't work out why no one seemed to notice. And it's been heavily overlooked throughout the whole entire PoE community. Big streamers, the whole lot. No one's really talking about it. And I find that kind of crazy, considering that, like, the whole reason I decided to make Ice Nova was because of this new Breakpoint. And, like, I don't know, I got excited about it months back. We have the calculator, we could have worked it out ages ago. But no one knows about it, so I'm going to bring it to everyone's attention. And it's super important because it adds a lot of damage at not a lot of investment. And it's the entire purpose of this new gem. if you have this new gem here, right here, and you know, all you did was just drop cooldown recovery off your build, you have made a terrible, terrible mistake. Like, it's so much damage, it's not funny, and you're not going to see it in POB exactly, but like once you see it in practice, and once you see this calculator, you'll understand exactly how much damage you're dropping. Okay, so this is your cooldown recovery speed, right? And this is your attacks per second. Anyone that's seen this calculator before knows that you're meant to be balancing out this thing at all times. So, what a lot of you may have heard, or probably none of you, is that back in the day, all you need is over 14 cooldown recovery to optimize your build. You know what I mean? They're like, anything more than 14% cooldown recovery is a waste. Doesn't matter whether you have 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Anything over 14% is a waste. Back in the day, that was true. Right up until that Awaken gem comes in. Some of you might have also been told that you can mess up your breakpoints, which is where you have too much attack speed and it messes up your proc rate because you're essentially halfway through a spin before your damage procs, and therefore you miss an Ice Nova every single second. This is also true. And this is what it looks like in practice. So as we go up to 7.4, right? We've got, I do believe that is 7 Novas per second. We go over it, 7.6, and all of a sudden we're back down to 5 Novas per second. We're essentially wasting 2 Novas every single time we do this because we're in between procs. So that's what happens with your attack speed, and why it is so important to balance out and optimize your attack speed with your cooldown reduction. And what a lot of people, like, this is what they mean, like, you can up and down this all you want. Doesn't seem to change anything. Aside from the new breakpoint, which is 52% cooldown reduction. This allows us to go beyond that old cap, and by a lot, extra 2 Novas per second optimally. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta imagine that right now, you know, say you're doing your 5 Novas per second or whatever it is, especially if you haven't balanced it out, you might be doing less than that, and you're wondering why you have no damage. When you go up to this, you're essentially adding 2 more hits, or about 33% more damage. A lot more damage. And when you see it in actual practice as well, this proc rate and the benefits of having more cooldown reduction affects your entire build. There's a lot of synergy with other things, like even just the cooldown recovery on your flame dash and a lot of other things. I'll go into the synergies a bit later, I don't want to get too boring with it, but long story short, if you are not using these breakpoints, you're kind of wasting that new gem. Just throw the gem away. The only other way I would use it is pretty much just to drop gear off. Like, if you didn't want any cooldown recovery, I don't know why you wouldn't. This, you know, an extra 2 Novas per second is literally whatever your current damage is, and you get 2 more per second. It adds up to a lot of damage at the end of it. I might do a little calculator thing very shortly. I might cut this out and edit it a little bit, show you exactly what I mean, but like it should be pretty obvious to you what I mean by now. I've also got another video showing exactly what happens when I take the gem out versus when I put it in. You go from being able to count this part here, you'll see it circle really slowly, like 1, 2, 3, that's how often your Ice Novas are going off, versus when I put in Awaken Cast on Crit, this thing blinks. I'm sure you've seen it in a couple of the intro videos, but it is a lot. There's a lot of difference. I don't like being a POB warrior, I don't like fluffing my numbers, and I'm going to go into that a lot more in a second. I'm going to not necessarily call out a few people, but I'm just going to have some very popular, very common build guides that people are using and following, and I'm going to show you what happens when we unclick a few things, and then you very rapidly see why the build is incredibly inconsistent if you build it with things like Pandemonious when you don't use these breakpoints. There's a lot of reasons why people are saying that their build can't do all endgame content, why it sort of struggles in certain areas, why they've made a lot of sacrifices. My gear can be upgraded and better, but I'm at the point where, because not a lot of people know about what the best kind of gear to go for is, that the gear doesn't exist. I have crafted nearly all my own gear, and that is purely because people don't understand what is really worth going for, why there's so many inconsistencies. They haven't really updated to the new Atlas either, which is another thing I'm going to go into. So that Awakener level 8 bonus thing is actually huge. Also, a lot of people might notice that I said 9.9 was the attack speeds that you need per second, and you'll say, you have 8.6, man, that's awful. That is purely because we are an assassin, and whenever I crit, I get a big 20% increased bonus from elusive. So what that actually means in practice is whenever I actually crit, which is all the time and I attack often, it goes up to 9.8. This is actually balanced out, just so people know. Also, if you're playing an assassin, which is probably the best way, just for balancing everything out. Like, don't get me wrong, you could do some jank stuff and get even better gear than this. If you had all the mirror tier gear, a Scion would actually be fantastic. There's a lot of things you can do with that for more consistent damage. You can get Fortify on the build, which is insane for tanking. You can build the tree a little bit differently, but ultimately, I have a perfect balance for Assassin, and it works so fantastically, and how the tree all lines up. I think one of the big things that is heavily underrated in this particular build is balance. Balancing out your defenses and offenses is so criminally underrated, it's not funny. And if you do it, and you do it correctly, oh boy, you have a build that can do everything in the game super comfortably, super reliably, get 100 easily. Like, it is strong. We basically have like a 9,000 effective health pool right now. A lot of people don't realize that, along with like a triple balanced Wise Oak and a whole bunch of, like, a plethora of other things that we have that a lot of builds don't. This is extremely tanky. I delve at depth 650. It could probably get to 800 comfortably before we start getting one shot. I mean, we can get one shot now with really nasty mods, but I've run penetration with 2 damage mods and still not been one shot. Granted, we're at the point where that will start happening. So I'll show you more on that later, but for now, I just really want to explain breakpoints. That's the first mechanic I want to go over, and I'm going to go over a few more. Alright, let's get on to the next part. Alrighty, the next mechanic I want to go over is it's more about map mods, and how they're sort of interacting with the build and the new Awakener bonus, and why it makes such a big difference, and why a lot of people are noticing that their damage very often just goes from this crazy big number right here to nothing, and very quickly, I might add. You know what I mean? Like, one very common modifier that's currently in the game pretty much halves this damage and makes it not fun to play. God forbid it gets paired with anything else. And it's another reason why we make a lot of the choices we make. So this isn't actually my build guide. It's called Big Number Little Cock. Go figure for why. And this is one of the more common guides out there. Some of you guys might recognize this gear. A lot of you guys have probably followed it. You're like, oh yeah, Bottled Faith, man, 15x, surely a great item. If you're relying on a Bottled Faith, you are going to have a bad time in the new league. Like, don't get me wrong, like, obviously a lot of people can use it. It is a very strong, powerful flask. But if you're using this, it means there's some inconsistency in your build. Some rather big one. And this thing helps with fluffing the numbers, essentially. But even with that all on, I just want to show you one massive mechanic that has changed, that is kind of unforgivable to people still be using, and why your damage goes from big to nothing rapidly, and you can't work out why you can't kill a Guardian anymore. Okay, so essentially, it's the new ailment modifier. So on maps, before we had 90% chance for monsters to refuse ailments, and you wouldn't really notice this sometimes, because obviously 90%, but you're doing, 10 attacks per second or something along those lines. You got 7 Novas per second. You're eventually gonna, even with a 10% chance, you're gonna have other ways to sort of, get more chance to freeze and stuff like that, and you're eventually gonna chill them. Doesn't matter that they had that modifier. However, in the new meta, with the Awaken level 8 bonus, monsters can now go over 100% ailment immunity. And they actually get ailment immunity, you know what I mean? And there's nothing in the game currently that can get around this. So we always relied on the fact that we could get chill. You could chill, you were fine. You get this one very common modifier on a map, and I'm just going to show you the damage right here. It's 460k. Very fake number, I might add. But look what happens the second I unclick this one modifier. 220, 230, whatever you want to call it, right? It halves your damage. That's because people heavily, and I mean heavily, invest into the fact that they can always chill an enemy. This might be true for some bosses, you know what I mean? So like Awakener, you won't really notice this. You should be able to somewhat reliably chill him. Shaper, same thing. It's like, oh yeah, man, I got all this damage. But on any other map modifier, so say you're doing Shaper, say you're doing any of the Elder Guardians or anything along those lines, you get this one modifier, you have half damage. This is a very common modifier. The people that are still building around the idea that they can forever chill or be frozen, think again. Like, think again. And this is only like a small, what would you call it? This is only one modifier that I untick. This is still with your Bottled Faith up and stuff like that. Like, let's start unticking. So some of you guys might be aware that another modifier that's also been buffed recently, a map modifier, is the Flask effect. Flask on certain maps now, when it goes up to 62% or whatever it is, so game reduced flash charges or whatever. This one right here says 50%. When this is multiplied out, this is over 60. I think it goes up to 64% or 62% or something along those lines. You will not always have Flask up. Relying on Flask is going to lead to massive inconsistencies. So what I'm just going to say is, we're just going to unclick this. We unclick these Flask. All of a sudden that damage is taken another ginormous hit. Your crit is incredibly inconsistent. Incredibly. By the way, this is still with crit chance lucky because he ticks on a whole bunch of stuff. He ticks it on so many times. You can rely on Consecrated Ground. I mean, he's getting it through the Flask, so I'm going to give him a no right there. Does he have Tailwind? He's got Tailwind Boots. Really weird build choice considering there's many other things you should be going for. Have you crit recently? He is going to crit recently, although I don't actually think that this makes a difference. I'm not sure why he has that clicked, but I'll leave that on for him. You will have power charges. Presumably you're playing an assassin. This is fair to have clicked. But the idea that you are forever, always, permanently going to have Flask up, especially on one guy that doesn't have some way to keep his Flask up during boss fights. So he blows his ward on the first Awakener that drops down. Doesn't kill him because he's got no damage. No real damage anyway. And then for the next time the Awakener pops down, because of the immunity phases, he's got no Flask charges. You don't always have this up. Why does he have it clicked all the time? I can't tell you enough how much that this is a POB warrior thing. It kind of tilts me. And we unclick this as well because it's not on Consecrated Ground. The only thing I'll give him credit for is the fact that he actually has Shaper Guardian clicked. The amount of times I've seen people go, oh no man, I'm versing just white mobs. Yeah, this is the damage. No, it's not. Please just click this at all times. If you're not clicking this, don't advertise it as, you know, you can do 200 million damage per second. It's like, you can, but what about on Shaper? Anyway, so we're going to keep going on a little bit, so we're just going to unclick a few more things. Another new, really common map modifier that is also affected by the Awaken 8 bonus is Crit Multi. Even I can't get around this, however, by investing very differently and building a tree differently, you'll understand that penetration is probably better to go for. So a lot of us, including me right now, because I'm still trying to buy these, have Koshbri's Malice, and we go, Global Critical Strike Multiplier, best thing in the game, does more damage. Not quite true. Not quite true, unfortunately. So I just want you guys to imagine this, and I'll pull up my POB for this as well, because I already have this thing ready to go. Okay, so this is my actual POB. Sorry, it's on Cyclone right now. We'll go back to Ice Novas. So yet again, I have Enemy Chilled right here. I'm going to show you the difference between when I take mine off. So look at, none of this stuff is clicked. I'll unclick my Flask for you, because although I do have a way of getting back my Flask, I might add, but you'll also notice my crit chance stays the same. Stays the same. Take very special note of that. You notice that like in areas where I have a Marraketh jewel, I just leave it empty. I don't put another jewel in there to fluff my numbers or nothing like that. This tree can be optimized better. I'm actually still in the process of, I've got level 100. There's still 2 more points I can put anywhere I want. Sometimes you can pick between damage and stuff. I'm not gonna, I will go over that maybe later, but for now I'm just gonna leave it as is. I don't care about having a high number. The idea that I want to show you is, look what happens when I click my Unchill button. I barely lost 20k damage. So right here, see it again, is enemy chilled? Doesn't make a huge difference in my damage. I'll also remind you that whilst you guys are like, that's not a very high number, that other guy had 470k on bosses in the optimal scenario with the perfect storm and tailwind and all this other sort of stuff. My number is real. You can unclick everything aside from power charges, which are guaranteed by the way, and this number barely changes. However, we are all susceptible to one big modifier. Ooh, hold on a second. I just gotta click exactly where I want. It's one of these POBs. So we've already unclicked a few things that make his damage way worse than mine, and they're rather realistic, and I've been quite generous to him. So the next modifier isn't actually is the enemy hexproof. We will test that out in a second, which is kind of funny as well. It's another big damage loss for these guys. But we're going to go with enemy takes reduced damage from crit multi. It says right there it goes up to 40%. You put that on with the new Awakener modifier. I think it's 52 or 54, so we put that in, right? And boy, does that hurt the number. So without 150, it literally halves your damage, especially when you invest as heavily as this build does. We go to 54, 52, even if I just go to 40, you know what I mean? So 40%, we just go to 40%, assuming you have no awakener bonus. It still hurts. It's 1/3 of your damage. This is true even for my build, okay? Because I have 500 crit multi. I tried to invest less than it. Actually, I've got 550. It's weird because I have pen. Anyway, so this is my current gear. I put this on mine as well. It hurts, man. 40. A lot less though, you know what I mean? It's still not enough to make my damage look like dog shit. Remind yourself that I have 2 extra ice novas per second over everyone else. You know what I mean? So it's a big difference in the damage that I'm losing compared to you. You know what I mean? So this is why mine is far more consistent, and we do it by, yet again, making sure we have permanent and proper damage, that it's just built properly. So we're going to untick that. The next thing, hexproof. We're not an occultist. We have no way around hexproof. So all these people, yet again, using Assassin's Mark and stuff, what happens when I click this? Huge chunk of damage, huge chunk of multi goes down, huge chunk of our crit goes down, a lot less damage. Because I get my crit through natural means, right? I have a legitimate... Wait, I already have hexproof on my... This is the wrong one. After video. So yeah, this one. On mine, barely notice a difference, right? I only just drop below this amount. This is another reason why we actually choose the Assassin's Mark as our a curse of choice, rather than like the Frostbolt setup you always see in, yet again, a very good Buildmaker's video, by the way, but I noticed that he doesn't mention a lot of things. He's a very popular guy. He likes the Frostbolt in the Koshbreeze, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a bad idea. Assassin's Mark is just better. The basic summary of why is because, I don't know if this actually shows us what Assassin's Mark does. I'm just going to quickly pull up the wiki. I know, really scuffed. Awful to have in your thing. Go to the PoE wiki. We're just going to quickly look up Assassin's Mark. And I'm just going to show you why. Assassin's Mark. So this thing right here, you kind of can ignore all these all you want. This right here is a flat multi. Flat. So when you reduce this, the effectiveness of Curse by, like, say 60%, which is, currently brutal, it's up to 70 or whatever. If you take 70% off 20%, you end up with like 4 or 5% or something like that. It's not so big, right? Because it's not a very high number. This is flat, by the way. It doesn't matter what level your Assassin's Mark is. You get this at all levels. It does affect this number right here, 1%, 1.5% to 2.5. But yet again, because this is a small number, very ineffective when you do percentages of small base numbers. Whereas if you're relying on, say, Frostbite, like a lot of people, so we go Frostbite, you take 70%, right, off of 44%, it matters a lot more. And this isn't a direct more multiplier either. This only works on mobs that have these resistances. So it's very weird that you have a 20% more multiplier, which is actually better than this, by the way. You know what I mean? In nearly every single scenario. So like you have a monster with high resistance, great, you take it away, that's like 5% more damage. Whereas like if you're using Assassin's Mark, which is why you should be using Assassin's Mark, along with a bunch of other things, this never changes. If they've got Assassin's Mark on them, they take extra damage from crit. If there's no reduced or no hexproof, you're getting the full benefit of this at all times. You know what I mean? Like, it is a flat amount. It's really good, and as you guys know, this amount of base crit is ginormous. It might seem like a waste right now when you're like, but Mick, you already have a 100% chance to crit without this. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. I'll go into it a little bit more later, but like, you want optimal. You want, in all scenarios, to have really good crit. So the one that you get, like, I've increased critical strike chance on my chest piece. In the event that, like, it's, we got the Ice Nova and stuff like that outside of them in our Koshbreeze, those aren't 100% chance to crit. And that can make Reflect somewhat scary. I mean, obviously we don't really die to Reflect because we have so much crit and we get it from so many other sources. But the main thing you want this for is because this is a more damage multiplier than that the minus to resistances from Frostbite. Minuses to Frostbite doesn't even equal this one node, and it doesn't make our damage any better. This is better and gives us this, which makes running no regen better. Like, We don't. Our skill doesn't cost us any mana, but our flame dash does. And on those maps where like we don't have any regen or something like that, it's like, oh, I can't get my mana back. They're kind of a little bit inconvenient to run. It doesn't really matter, but this makes it so the second we kill one, we get our mana back. It has to be a no regen, hexproof map, and even then, we can still run it. We can run no leech and everything because of the way we've built our build. So it's super, super important to recognize that, like, when you are playing the new Atlas and you got the new Awakener bonus, those modifiers make it so you got to start unticking things. This is our damage with hexproof. We'll even put on the minus crit. You know what I mean? So we're gonna put 40 in. I don't want it to look too bad, but like, you know what? Fuck it. We'll put it in 54. So in the perfect storm, right? In the absolute perfect storm. So you know, it's a hexproof map. We've got reduced crit here. The enemy isn't chilled. Absolute worst case scenario. I have 9 ice novas per second that do 150k damage. 150k. 9 of them. That's still over a mil. Like, worth of damage. Not to mention there's a whole bunch of other stuff I'm going to go into. This is the absolute worst case scenario for my thing, and I still have a 100% chance to crit, so it's still insanely consistent. This is no flask up, by the way. You know, so we've got no flask as well. We've got all the worst map modifiers for us. We still have this damage. It is so, so important. I know this is boring, guys. I know this is like, you know, why is he telling us all these boring things? This is still not even optimized. We can get more damage than this. But the point is, in all scenarios, this is the worst my damage will ever be. You know what I mean? So this, and you pretty much just times this by 10. It's still really, really good. In the worst case scenario. That's why my damage never seems to dip out a lot. Obviously, it's a lot higher normally, but this is half my damage. You know what I mean? This can go up. If you go to this other guy's, so this guy, you know what I mean? Like, so that's my one again. Never tell which way it is. But, you know, you untick all this stuff on his, he's still just at this. This is no hexproof, this is no crit. This is just unticking Frozen and Flask, which he's never going to have up all the time. You know what I mean? And this is with giving him Tailwind, this is with his thing. You'll notice his attacks per second isn't balanced out, I might add as well. See, where's his attacks per second? He's got 13.8. This is unfortunately a waste. It's no new breakpoint. He doesn't have. He has just 1 cooldown recovery, which is kind of weird considering he has the Awaken gem. So we go to his build or whatever. Where is it? Yeah, he has Awaken cast on crit. What a waste. It's like the old version of it. You know what I mean? Where like, if you go beyond that 14%, but you're not hitting 52, you're wasting your time. He's got this gem. He's clicked it up to level 6 and everything. There's no need for it. He doesn't reach 52%. Does nothing. So in the politest way possible to this popular streamer, look, you fluff the numbers. It's a POB warrior thing. He is not the only one. Sadly, he's not. And like, all I'm gonna say is that like, it's not a shot at them. It might just come from like not knowing. But it is really, really unfair to the PoE community to sort of mislead people with this information, to click all these boxes, and to not take the time to consider how the new Atlas works, how the new mechanics of the game work, how these breakpoint works. It's a lack of information. So, I know that the mechanics side of this is going to be really, really boring, and I put that at the start of my video. If you just want to skip forward and just go to the gearing, you don't really care about the explanation, you don't really care about sort of understanding how this build really, really works, that's fine. You can just skip ahead. I'll try and work out how to do timestamps or something like that. You know, very, very boring. This is unfortunately how I speak. However, you actually want to know how these builds work. You actually want to know why my build works and your one doesn't. This is one of the main fundamental reasons. If you rely on Curse, if you rely on all these things that can be taken away at a moment's notice, your actual numbers look so different, it is not funny. Your actual numbers look, you know, much worse than this, and this is me being kind. You know what I mean? Like, in the worst case scenario, that's my damage. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, this one. It's actually more. In the worst case scenario, I have this damage, which is higher than his, and on top of that, I have an extra 2 novas per second. So this PoB doesn't even do it justice for what's really going on. Not to mention, he doesn't have blind and a whole bunch of other things. Like, if you're relying on Pandemonious, Pandemonious relies on you chilling. If you're not chilling, you don't get that blind bonus. I actually run Blood and Sands. Should be here somewhere. Ooh, not actually put it in. No, there it is. Sorry, Flesh and Stone. My bad. I actually run Flesh and Stone along with zealotry, along with all these other things you can squeeze into the build when you do this right. So, big disclaimer right here is the fact that, like, when you see other guys POBs and stuff like that, just pay attention to their crit speed and their attack speed and whether they're balanced out. Pay attention to their cooldown recovery and whether they're balanced out. Pay attention to how many things they have ticked and stuff like that, and you will avoid falling into the trap of a POB warrior. Another really, really, really big cardinal sin I'm going to see, and I'm going to call out a lot of streamers on this. On a lot of my videos, you see me have my menu tabbed, so that, like, you can see the map modifiers. That is super important, that you guys can genuinely see what the map modifiers were when I was doing these bosses. I try and do that on all my videos. I know a lot of people don't like the map being in the middle of the screen. I do it on purpose so that you guys can see I'm not running white maps. I have unfortunately seen a lot of streamers and a lot of the guys that make these really nice videos, and some people think it's to make their shit look clean. A lot of it's because they're running white maps. They're trying to show you their raw damage and power against no modifiers. It's unrealistic and it's unfair to the viewers to actually do this. It's a bit of a scam, and I get that they want to, you know, profit and make their builds popular and stuff like that. Fair enough. More power to them. I don't want to do that. I want to show you what a build should be built like, how it's actually done. Hopefully you guys like that. Hopefully you guys pass on the message, or at the very least, if you don't want to, you know, say you hate me or something like that, fair enough. Pass this knowledge on to someone else. You know what I mean? Like, you make your own build guide. You do it for yourself. Anything. Just take the bits out of this that you can. Understand that a lot of people buff up the numbers. This is literally 25 minutes and I've explained just mechanics. So I know this is going to be a long video. It's unfortunate. You can skip to the parts you want, but if you did watch this, this is the most important part. What I've just showed you with these breakpoints, with how the new map modifiers work, why your damage is so inconsistent and why it doesn't work in practice. That stuff right there is actually what makes the build. We're going to go into balance a little bit later and proper defenses as well. Like obviously my timeless duel and stuff like that, and why I have so much EHP. That sort of stuff is extremely important, but this is why your damage is inconsistent. This is why 1 minute you're running maps and you're killing whites and you're having the time of your life, and then the next minute you can't work out why you can't kill a red bestiary beast. This is why. So here it is, the actual numbers, how it actually looks. This, yet again, was a very, very big POB warrior, and some people go further than this, you know what I mean? Like, they'll have, I don't know if this guy's got it. Look at his items. Some people on their gloves. Yeah, so this thing right here, you know what I mean? He has these crazy gloves that, yet again, rely on... You can use the one that says, if you've dealt a critical strike recently, that's a consistent mod. Because you can always deal crit. You know what I mean? Like, once you've got enough crit, you're always dealing that, you can use that. But when you see stuff like increased damage against chilled enemies, cannot always chill. So pay attention to stuff like this, man. Like, I'll go into why this is also a bad pair of gloves later. Like, you're literally missing a lot of damage. You don't get multi, you don't get anything, and obviously he's struggling for resistances. However, just take these things into account, man. Like, you unclick this stuff, and all of a sudden your damage goes to shit. Pay attention to consistent and proper 100% real damage that's non-conditional. Know what I mean? Okay, so we're going to go on to the next part now. Okay guys, next thing I want to discuss is the gear. So, we're very, very particular about the gear, and that's what sort of led us to why our stuff doesn't damage, doesn't, you know, sort of suffer from map modifiers so bad. And I suppose a big part of that is how we've balanced out the tree and our gear. So, for instance, we want a hubris circlet. Energy shield and life work really, really great in unison with each other. Like, say I didn't have this and I had like an evasion-based helm. If you go look over here at our Wind Dancer, a Wind Dancer says we have less evasion rating if you haven't been hit recently. Kind of sucks, but that's like an entropy system we've sort of built up or whatever. It works really, really well with our acrobatics. Acrobatics does give us a lot less energy shield, but because we're not stacking mass amounts of energy shield for hybrid, and we do go through life, this makes these three systems work in unison with each other. Our Wind Dancer works really, really well with our acrobatics, and by going hybrid, like small amounts of hybrid, so we don't really get crazy amounts of energy shield, it works well unison with the fact that like this thing acts as a buffer. Our energy shield is purely a buffer. It also works well with the fact that we have a small amount of energy shield leech, which is fantastic for small amounts of energy shield, and we have a lot of life leech and stuff like that. So at all times, we're constantly building up entropy, basically, which is like, in the event that I do take hits, when I do take hits, I don't take a lot of damage. So I'm really, really safe against big one-shots. It It also works really, really well with our steel skin, because obviously we're very, very rarely taking hits, and when we do, they're 20% less damage. And they're also going to proc this because we're looking for big hits. And it also works well with the fact that we have an energy shield buffer. So think of the small amounts of energy shield you invest into as a buffer. Also, we end up getting a fair bit of it on the tree for stuff like when we get Sanctity right here. It's 1% life, it's 10% max energy shield. That would be going to waste if we didn't use it. Same thing with like our evasion rating. Like if we had a Lion's Pelt here, you know what I mean? Like you have a little bit of energy, evasion rating here. We have a less multiplier against it at all times, and we don't build up enough of it for it to be useful. However, energy shield, even in small amounts, acts as a straight up EHP. It's effective HP. It is a nice buffer. That's why we go for energy shield. That's why we don't have a Lion Pelt helm. It's just so much nicer as a buffer, and these things are better to roll, and not to mention colors. So that's all you need to know about the helm. You're just looking for maximum life, any kind of chaos resistance, and if you're building it the same way as I am, you really want fire and lightning. It just makes it super easy to triple balance your Wise Oak. That's how I've got it in the POB. If you want to sit there and do a bunch of other calculations and you're just going to try and work in one other resistance or something along those lines, fair enough. You can also replace this physical damage from hits taken as fire with more damage, so like you can get a Shaper base and go for cold damage to spells. However, we have enough damage, so obviously once you get enough damage, you really, really want survivability. So that's what I'm always talking about with that balance thing, you know what I mean? It's like, we've gotten past the point of having insane damage. Go for defenses if you can. You don't need this exact one, but for me, this was perfect. So obviously I've divined this to triple balance my Wise Oak, which is another layer of defense, which you can work out yourself. Plenty of ways to go about it, like if you need more cold damage and chaos, cold resistance or something like that, you can get it here. I'm not going to go into all that right now. That's the helm. That's why we picked this helm in particular. So the things of note are just the enchant, the fact that we're going hybrid. If you can pick between a physical damage sort of multiplier there or whatever, physical damage taken modifier, or cold damage as hits. The other thing you're going for is obviously the -9 to cold resistance. It's just nice to have, it's not necessary. Nearby on these helms is actually like 50 yards, just so you know, so pretty much everything gets affected by that. Really, really worth noticing. I would also always go for a Hubris base. You can go for a Lion Pelt if you want, if it's cheaper, but for some reason they're not really great with Wind Dancer. Not a good combo. You're going to get like 10% chance to evade. When you've got Wind Dancer on, you're going to have 5. It's literally useless. It doesn't work. We have dodge anyway, so dodge is better. You know, go for the Hubris base. Long story short, if you want my advice. Next piece of gear. I think this one's worth mentioning. So I'm currently still trying to buy up all these, as many as I can, or whatever you want to call. There is several reasons why I went with this. This is actually a temple base, believe it or not. And then I have kept slamming Redeemer Orbs on there. Reason for that, the leech and the cold resistance. I had already done my calculations for this, and it allowed me to drop my my cold damage that I had here and my cold resistance. And then when I mix it up with the resistance modifier there, you see I have exactly 16%. That's kind of because I can cheat the system now. I have 3 slots where I can kind of cheat and mix those resistances up however I like, and sort of mash them up, play around with diviners. You can do this any way you see fit. But I wanted that cold resistance, and I wanted my leech from that source so that I could drop leech off my Cospreys, off my other source, because big thing I want to go over is the fact that you look at a lot of those other builds, they have no sources of leech whatsoever. Aside from maybe a few people, like we had it in the build, so I go to this little tab here. Until you get this modifier, you're going to be reliant on the life leech gem. Nothing wrong with that, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with it. However, some of us like to automate bone chill. This is like the only thing we have that relies on the fact that we need to chill. So by getting life leech here, by getting the cold resistance here, we solve 2 problems with 1 stone. The next big thing it allows us to do is if you slam these Redeemer Exalted Orbs, man, and you get Hatred has reduced mana reservation. This is ginormous for the build. This is permanent. We use Hatred. We love Hatred. It is the best thing in the game. It allows us to squeeze on all of our auras. And we do have some really good ones. We have Flesh and Stone. This is the less damage multiplier at all times. It is a permanent blind. Because we're not applying it on a hit, or we're relying on Pandemonious to chill and then chilled enemies have blinds, this is actually always in effect. This is by far the best way to get defenses on your build. It's so much better than Pandemonious, not only in practice, but on POB as well. So it also allows us to have a level 21 precision. This solves a lot of accuracy issues. It gives us additional crit. As I told you, I like having natural crit chance. I like having a crit that can never go down. So if my Assassin's Mark isn't working, doesn't matter. Hexproof enemy, doesn't matter. Whenever we're running a reflect map, it does not matter. Hatred. Hatred is ginormous. We want this as low as possible because we want to pair it with Zealotry. You don't need Zealotry. You can use a Herald of Ice, but man, if you can actually get this to squish into your build, so much better to have than to not to have. This is 16% more damage at all times and gives us Consecrated Ground, which is a nice defensive buff. You could pair it with a different Watcher's Eye if you really wanted, but I like double Hatred. The biggest thing you're going to want, and another reason why you go Hatred, is flat crit. Obviously, this is an insane Watcher's Eye. I understand that. I paid a lot more than this than it's actually worth. I think I paid 100 exalts for this. 1, because it was perfectly divined. I like perfect things. 2, because, you know, I like to min-max builds. You guys don't have to have this. The only thing that matters on this is getting that critical strike chance. This allows us to drop crit in other areas. So we get, say, 5 points right here. We don't have to pass through here. And we just have permanent crit. This big thing to notice about the Hatred one is it says you just get 1.8% more crit. That includes your attack multiplier. Big thing I hate seeing is people that have 100% chance to crit on their Ice Nova, and they have like 60 to 40% chance to crit on their Cyclone and wonder why their proc rate is messed up. If you aren't critting 100% of the time, that proc rate and all that calculations you've done get thrown out the window. I don't care if you have to get it through a diamond flask. Yet again, flasks are unreliable. If you have to get it through a bottled faith, it's the same thing where like the second you don't have that flask up, it does not work. I don't like relying on flasks because they're not consistent, they're not permanent. Especially with the new map multiplier, because there's nothing you can do aside from be a Pathfinder. You be a Pathfinder, everything gets thrown to the water, okay? Yet again, we're at an 8-minute explanation, we've only described 2 items. You want Hatred reduced mana because it's 50% more multiplier. So Hatred reserves 50%. You know what I mean? So that's the one you want to knock down. That's also why we get Sovereignty. By the way, these increased effective aura skills affects how much damage we get from these. So these are actually add a lot more than you would imagine. It's fantastic. It just makes your accuracy better. It makes your Flesh and Stone work better. It makes your Zealotry. It makes everything work better. This is why it's so effective on the tree and why we get so much extra damage. So some people are like, these 2 points are a waste. They're not. These auras are just straight up better, and there's no map modifier in the game that goes your auras are less effective. There's ones for your curses. There is not one for auras. Auras work at 100% consistency. This allows us to get 2 of the best auras in the game, along with 2 make your build truly unique and truly fantastic to use. Great defenses and offenses. They solve a lot of problems. Okay, that out of the way. You can metacraft these. They're actually really easy. So like I buy up these bases for insanely cheap because obviously people don't rate that temple modifier, and you just need it with crit multi. I have been trying to get a tier 1 base with this Hatred multiplier one. Once I've got that, I can then metacraft for a very powerful and very insane amulet here. So like this one isn't perfect. I just did a quick metacrafting just to hit spell damage, and then I hit max energy shield, and for me that was enough. What I would like to get, and what would actually be so much more damage than a Pandemonious, would be 10% pen, which is, by the way, is a Redeemer affix. So that's insanely good. If I could hit that, I could metacraft this, but I like doing perfect stuff, so because the crit multi is only tier 2, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to keep buying up bases, I'm going to keep trying until I get the base, and then I'm going to metacraft. However, what would be absolute best in slot and insane, and by far a mirror tier worthy amulet, would be if I could get +1 to cold gems. That's a massive more multiplier because it affects my Ice Nova, it affects all the Ice Novas I should add, so it's a lot more damage overall, and 10% pen. Obviously life on top of that would be great, but 55 life? Look at my health pool, it's fine. You could obviously get nearly 7k if you had perfect gear. Like, I've just got crafted life everywhere, you know what I mean? You can get way better than this. These are tier 3, they're awful. This thing doesn't have a double corruption for another 6% more life. If I could get 6% more life, yet again, imagine that as like another 100 and something bonus. You can easily get over 6.5k life with the 7k energy shield. You can do so much more with this. Like, I've min-maxed the best I can. You can do better, so keep that in mind, guys. So you can get much better than this. So all you gotta do is just buy up a double suffix, which is just cold resistance and Crit Multi, probably the best in slot you can get. I know Crit Multi's not the greatest, I've kind of debunked that. It's better than having nothing in that slot, you know what I mean? But you can buy up one without Crit Multi for insanely cheap. You know what I mean? Like, all you need is that Hatred Reduced Mana Multiplier. If you so choose, and you really want to get Bone Chill on here, which doesn't always work, and you want to swap out Life Leech, you can just drop the cold resistance with cold damage leeches life. You don't need it to be Temple Modifier. The only one that I would say is mandatory is that Hatred Reduced Mana Reservation, because it allows you to squeeze in 2 auras that instantly make this thing so much more powerful. This is a 10% more multiplier. You know what I mean? Sorry, not 10% more. 16% more multiplier, along with allowing you to squeeze in all these other auras. That is so much better than Pandemonious, it's not funny. Pandemonious is conditional, so no Pandemonious. Pandemonious bad. For the love of God, stop overrating that unique item. Like, everyone's like, best in slot at all times. I'm like, not really. You can put up spell damage, crit multi against it, and it instantly loses out. God forbid if you add the fact that I can now fit Zealotry into my build and a bunch of other things. It's not that great. So this is better. It gives you permanent leech. It's amazing. So this is what you're aiming for. Even worse than this is fine. Pen would be better than this. So many things you can do. That's the amulet sorted out, okay? Now you know about the amulet. Rings. You want these stats, or any other kind of stats, like if you can get 30% increased elemental damage, better than this. You know what I mean? If you can get 36%, better than this. You know what I mean? If you can get this on an opal base, it's better than this. All you're looking for is one thing that gives you your accuracy rating. So, have the life, have the accuracy rating, have whatever damage multipliers you want. If you can get this on an opal base, for the love of God, sell it to me. I've been looking all league for it, and like, God, it's so hard to get people to like get good things. And right now, the opal ring market is really, really messed up. People hit like one modifier and they just go crazy. This cost me like not even, I think I paid like 50C for this. Granted, I then had to throw on the multipliers, but severely underrated skills, you know what I mean? Or I should say, not skills, affixes. You don't need crazy gear like people think. This is just purely to fill out your resistances, which makes your entire build work. So accuracy is the big important thing here, even if it doesn't have spell damage. I like going, channeling skills have minus to mana cost. You don't need increased damage, you can put whatever you want in there, you know, like having a 13% cold damage on the ring won't kill it, you know what I mean? If you needed a different affix, not having the spell damage won't kill it. It's a little bit less damage. You can do better than this. I haven't even blessed this thing because I'm just waiting for an opal ring base. So you can have a lot more damage than me. Like, that's what I'm saying. Basically, it's just like, ideally, you wouldn't have multi-mod. You know what I mean? Like, I would just have the -3 to mana cost, and I would have base cold damage on it with a shaper base, and then I would have elemental damage and spell damage on top of each other, or just a crazy essence crafted on cold damage, which could also be over 30%, and then I use a catalyst on it, and then you're literally looking at like an extra 60 to, is it an extra 60 or 90% damage per ring you could get. So both of these things are rolled the exact same. This one here, only thing that matters again is the Assassin's Mark. We choose Assassin's Mark. The best way to get it is through the ring, because it's on hit, which means that, say my Frostbolt flies out in the middle of nowhere, bang, it gets affected by this multiplier no matter what, which is obviously really, really good for reflect maps, because on reflect maps, your Frostbolt obviously doesn't have a 100% chance to crit, even though we have a great amount, but this helps us get close. It makes running reflect super smooth. I don't die to reflect maps. With my current level of investment, it's going to get even better when you have, like, once I can get crit 10 and critical strike chance on these, I can drop attack multi here. Sorry, attack chance or whatever it is, and then go for spell, which just, it puts me up to like over 90% on any target. So it's really good. Anyway, I digress. You're just looking for Assassin's Mark ring, you can just multi-mod it. You're just looking for accuracy rating. Those are the things that matter on your rings. Can get better than this. Have these on an opal base. If anyone crafts them and doesn't want them, for the love of God, send me a PM. I really just want to upgrade my damage. I like min-maxing. Those are the rings sorted. Okay, chest piece. Super, super important to realize that you can get way better than this. Well, not way better, but just better rolls would be nice. And +2 to AoE gems and +1 to socketed gems would be best in slot for this build. I wouldn't recommend paying a crazy amount of money for it. Some dude put one up for like 3 mirrors. Don't ever pay those kind of prices. It's ridiculous, you know what I mean? Like, these things cost 3x to throw into the void. I would pay around 50 to 60x for a +1, because people got to realize that, like, you can buy for 60 exalts a +2/+2. That's +4 to the socketed gems you have. So a +1 socketed gem is still only +1 levels, unless you're using an Empower in your build, which is not great with this build, obviously. So for this build, you're only really getting +3 levels. It is not worth paying, you know, over 100x, like some people think it's worth, for one of those bases. But so it's only like the difference between this and a +1 is like a few percent more damage. Don't go crazy with it. Try not to go crazy with it, you know what I mean? So another reason we use this, increased area damage obviously affects our build. The area of effect makes everything so nice. We use Conk Effect. Conk Effect is a fantastic link. This isn't even qualityed, not even 21. But we have Conk Effect on both of our Ice Novas. We still want them to overlap. Carcass Jack makes this perfect because of how much we're already scaling our area of effect. Getting these nodes, each one of these is a 1% increased radius. It makes our stuff overlap. It makes our stuff do a lot more consistent damage. It helps our clearage and coverage. Like I said, I like to balance things out. This helps our clear speed, helps our coverage. It helps us with our resistances, which is also really, really nice to notice. And All Res makes it fantastic for triple balancing our Wise Oak. This chest piece has everything we need. Absolutely everything. So for the love of God, I know you can get better than this. A Lore Weave is really, really nice defensively. Good luck getting the colors on it. The reason why I like using uniques is because the option of double corrupting is there. This double corrupt adds so much damage, it's not funny. You can literally test this out in the POB, get a regular Carcass Jack, put it on there, you're missing 3 levels to your thing, you get like 15% less damage. By being able to double corrupt it and reliably and just have many, many attempts at this, you can min-max. Even if you had one of those chest pieces, you know, an explodey chest piece with the crit, you then have to constantly, you know, those things cost like 30x to make or something crazy like that, let alone having these particular stats. Then you have to double corrupt it to get the same amount of damage. Good luck. Anyone that wants to do that, that has that, fantastic to you. I'll give you a mirror. I'll mirror it off you if you get one. Well, actually, I can't mirror it because it's double corrupted. But good luck. You know what I mean? Like, good luck getting that. That's crazy expensive. One of them doesn't exist on the server. Even if it does, I don't think the guy would give it to me. If you do, and you want to sell it to me, I would really appreciate that. You know what I mean? But, like, ultimately, not necessary. This is the cheapest, easiest, most effective way of doing this. And it is technically still min-maxing. It is fantastic. A lot of damage. Perfect for your clear. This is what you want. You want a Carcass Jack. Pretty much best in slot. Like, the alternatives are insanely hard, insanely ridiculous, and they're going to actually lower your clear speed. They're going to make things feel a little bit clunky, especially considering that we do not use Herald of Ice when we get the chance. So, anyway, I digress. Next thing you want, I have the imprint base for this. So, gain a flash charge and cooldown recovery. Really, really great. It just allowed me to imprint beast this. You can actually get way, way better than this. If you just want the cooldown recovery speed, the flash charges when you deal a critical strike is only really for bossing. It just allows me to get a, you know, I often have flask up during boss fights. This is something not really available to a lot of those people using Bottled Faith. It was really, really neat when I found it. It is what I wanted. I wanted, you know, % more life, and then I could craft life on top of it, which would actually be, you know, an insane amount more life. So 10% extra plus a tier 1 life roll would be huge. Stygian Vice is your best base. Not really much else to say. You could frigid craft these with the Redeemer's base, and you can get like 90% more damage, and then put 20% more damage on top of that. You know what I mean? Like, you could get so much more damage on top of a life roll, provided the only thing you need is a cooldown recovery speed that's acceptable to hit 52%. So when you get this, the only thing you're looking for cooldown reduction, as much life as you can get, as much damage as you can get. If you can gain a flash charge on critical strike, it is actually really, really handy. It's nice to have on boss fights, but most of the time you're going to phase a boss instantly. So unless it's got 4 phases, you're probably not going to run out of flask. Hopefully you get flash charges back. It is convenience of, it's purely out of convenience basically that I have this, and I managed to get this really, really quick. Start of the league, I was super excited. I have actually tested that map modifier, the modifier since to gain flash charge when you deal a critical strike. There's an internal cooldown that basically makes it so you can only get 1 flash charge every 0.2 seconds, and it only goes to 1 flask. If you add up all your flask charges, you literally need like 250 flash charges per second, and you can never go over the inherent amount that you're allowed to get per second, aside from flash charge effect gained, so like Poacher's Mark, you know what I mean? So this multiplier always sucks, and it goes to shit instantly when you have that map modifier of gaining reduced flash charges. Not worth investing into, nice to have, not necessary. So that's the belt discussed, and hopefully it's really, really good to you. Boots. I have a very unrealistic pair of boots. I bought these specifically because I could metacraft them later. I always knew that I could just hit movement speed, you know, very reliably too, because there's not that many prefixes. So I was more worried about the fact that... I suppose it doesn't matter that I'm AFK. Anyway. So it actually doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter that the movement speed isn't perfect on these. I can craft these whenever I want. Biggest thing about them was, if you want to balance out your Wise Oak, this is how you do it. The damage pen on bosses is really, really nice. I had to do a lot of runs to get these. I think like upwards of 40 something twice enchanted, or something along those lines. You know what I mean? I did a lot of lab. Took a whole day. It's not fun. I don't like lab. This build is really, really good at lab, by the way. You're super fast. You have a fair bit of regen in the event that you don't have them. You get flash charges back no matter what, which is really, really nice. Really, really good for this. Only thing that's mandatory is the cooldown recovery speed. You want to reach that breakpoint, so you have to have at least a level 4 Awaken cast on crit, by the way, when you can actually get this build up and running. These are best in slot. Hardest part is getting these resistances. I know this has been like a long video. We're almost there. Cospreys. Should be pretty obvious what these are. You can check out the links in the POB or something along those lines. Long story short, biggest thing I want people to know about these Cospreys, right, is pen is always going to be better than the crit multi, because the crit multi is susceptible to map mods. The pen is not. Say you have a map where the monster has increased resistances. That resistance is still bet against your crit multi. You know what I mean? Whereas pen is always at 100% effectiveness. I can even show you in the POB, and I may do so. I might do a little cut soon and just show you the fact that like pen is always more damage, especially when you have that the multiplier that halves your crit multi. So if you have 250 crit multi and you're sitting there really banking on this extra 50, it doesn't do a lot when that map mod is active. The pen, on the other hand, is always at 100% effect. Big thing I want to get over that is that. Another huge thing that was brought out to me by a much better player than me is the fact that these things have a proc rate of 1.5. That's important to recognize because that's per Cospreys, okay? So I see a lot of people have their Ice Nova paired up with their bloody their Frostbolt. This means effectively that your Ice Nova is proccing half the time, because it goes, I proc my Ice Nova, 1.5 seconds passes, and then I proc my Frostbolt, and then I proc my Ice Nova, and then I proc my Frostbolt. Have these separately. You do not need a Frostbolt to be 24/7 permanent. Like, obviously, when you reach my level of crit rate, you're still not going to even notice this. You do want Frostbomb automated. Pair your Frostbolt, which doesn't do much damage, with your Frostbomb, with either Life Leech or Bone Shield, depending on whether you've got the Leech on your amulet or not. You know what I mean? And always have your Ice Nova, because you scale so much into it, you get increased damage from your enchant here, everything you got around cold damage. You want this thing proccing every 1.5 seconds. If it is the only thing on this Cospreys, it is always proccing. So every 1.5 seconds, you want your Ice Nova going off. This is so much more damage, it is insane. It's insane, okay? So always have these two separate. Unless you only have one Cospreys, in which case, your other things are like Lycosidate. Don't worry about this, that's just anecdotal. But super, super important that people know about this. Like, it's a huge mistake. You're wasting your time. You don't want to be having like one semi-damage Frostbolt, then one semi-damage Ice Nova. You want big Ice Novas constantly proccing for obvious reasons. Most of our damage is scaled towards the Ice Nova. And then you just want your Frostbolt occasionally proccing. If you have if you get rid of this Frostbomb, right, you're going to have a crazy amount of Frostbolts. And that's great and all, but you can only get that repeat on 2 different Ice Novas. So they're not even shotgunning. So having too many Frostbolts is also a detriment. So just remember that. It's a weird piece of knowledge that I've just passed on to you. A lot of things, yet again, people don't recognize it. They always have the same setup. They've all watched the same video. For the love of God, please correct your thinking. Yet again, this is just, there's so many inconsistencies, like the breakpoints, stuff like that, I want to fix in the PoE community. Cooldown reduction of this is unique to the item. So if you only have one thing in this, that thing gets the full benefit of being on a trigger. You really want your Ice Nova to be on one trigger on its own, getting the full benefit of being on a cost breeze. Otherwise, you are wasting it. Your Frostbolt is obviously paired with an inconsistent piece of damage. It does not matter as much. You're only using the Frostbolt to help with clear and to use this Frozen Trail duel. That's all it's for, and to get the extra repeats, because that's obviously more damage. The actual Frostbolt itself does not matter, and we have so much crit and crit multi that in the videos you see where I'm spinning around, you see how many I get. I have an insane amount. It only really matters on bossing, and you don't want too many. It actually makes your damage worse. So this is the setup. This is optimal. You swap this out for Life Leech if you don't have it on the Ami. Kosh Breeze explained to you. Okay, last piece of gear here. Command of the Pit. Why Command of the Pit? Permanent Arcane Surge. That's 10% more damage. It's only a level 1. It's 10% more damage. The mana regen and the rest of it don't really matter. It's 10% more damage. You got to realize that. Not only that, how good are Abyss Jewels, okay? So just imagine 24% more multi on a pair of gloves. You would cream your pants for that. This glove gives you that. Not to mention, you could get up to 80% life. Hey man, that's nearly as good as a tier 1 roll. Not to mention, this thing has a 6% implicit, not implicit, sorry, multiplier on it, you know what I mean? That's 100 something life anyway that can be paired with an additional 80. That's a lot of life. That's more life than you can get on even a god tier pair of gloves. Including the fact that by these being unique, not only are they cheap and readily available, you can now afford to double corrupt these. I said this before about uniques. Uniques are fantastic in slots because you can corrupt them. Corruptions can push your damage to the next level. It can push your survivability. If you can, you could get a 6% life roll, right? And then you could corrupt a 6% life roll on top of this. That's 12% increased life. And then you can pair it with insane cold damage to spells. I might add as well, these current ones I'm using are awful. This is tier 3, tier 1, tier 3. I should really go invest because I have the money to go get a whole bunch of tier 1s across the board. You only need 3 of these gems and then you have maximum damage. I have tier 3s across the board. I will hopefully rectify this by the time my official POB comes out. Or I'm just going to put it in the POB and let you guys know what you're going for. You can also get a 4 prop on these. Yet again, even more damage. This could be really, really big, guys. Like, there is no better in slot than this. This is at all time. You're not relying on a vortex setup to proc your Arcane Surge only on bosses. This is permanent. This is why I like automating my Bone Chill. I don't have to rely on a vortex setup. All of this stuff is always on, regardless of whether the map is freeze or not. I always have Leech. I always have a Bone Chill. I always have an Arcane Surge. Like, I don't need to press a vortex button. I literally just spin and I at maximum damage in all scenarios. Cannot get better than this. Okay, so that's that explained. I have an awful Frozen Trail. Simple as that. Didn't bother getting the Corrupted Blood. It's not really necessary. I don't die ever on Awakener, so whatever. I have one of these with attack speed. Purely because I like to get as close to that 9.9 as possible. However, I'm a little bit scared to go above 9.9 because the actual point ratio after that, so like 9.95, you know what I mean? It's actually kind of scary. I don't know what it is. So I stay at exactly 9.8 because I don't want to go over. I only have one thing with increased attack speed, otherwise you would be at 9.7 or something like that. Not a big deal. Double multi, life. Life is all you're after. Multi is nice, despite the fact that it takes a big hit from the map multiplier. There's nothing better. You can just get flat cold damage if you want. It's not really a big deal. This Brutal Restraint, you obviously want because it builds up entropy. We use Phase Acro. Phase Acro pairs fantastically, I mean fantastically, with Wind Dancer. It's 20% less damage multiplier in the event that you take a hit. We're built around taking big hits. We can tank a Shaper Slam. You'll see it in the video. It's fantastic. It works together. Also, you'll notice why we always go Phase Acro. If you're not going Phase Acro, I hate to tell you this, you're doing something wrong because Phase Acro pairs with our Elusive. Elusive gives us more chance to dodge, so we actually have 60% chance to dodge at all times for attacks and 50% chance to dodge attack spells. This works with our Wind Dancer even more, and when we don't have that, we have Steel Skin, we have a 20% less multiplier from the Wind Dancer, we have all these entropy-based systems that build up to us being able to tank over a 15k slam from Shaper. We can actually tank the Shaper Slam. It is insane, and we can get so much more life, so much more defenses than this. I still have room to grow. God, I would love that gear. You know what I mean? Like, you could nearly get, I think, nearly 7k life. nearly 7.8k, sorry, not 7.8. You can get nearly 800 ES or something along those lines. You can get a lot, and then on top of that, I could get more defenses, more offense, the works, man. So there's still room to go. We have a triple balanced Wise Oak that obviously gets taken into our defenses as well. We're using a Basalt Flask. We don't need, the only thing I would also change in this is my Flask. Okay, I'm going to quickly go over the Flask. Only reason why we have this is because these aren't, if I metacraft it and I hit 30% movement speed, unfortunately I can't go for 35, and I had life on there, I would get Cannot Be Frozen as a map mod. Why would I do that? So that I could drop this and go to my straight up more speed Flask, which I already got here, which is just increased effect. We got a lot of Flask. I would maybe divine this because, you know, I'm like that. One of those people that doesn't mind wasting money. And then basically that would allow us to go a lot faster. So even the speed you've currently seen me clearing maps at can be improved. So these are all improvements you could make to the build, guys. That is why we have built it this way. Next piece of mention is that all the gems are pretty much the same thing. They're just double multi-life. Could be divine better. Yet again, I don't care that much. This build already does everything in the game. Not necessary. Next big thing, the Watcher's Eye. We want that crit. That crit makes everything so much more consistent. It is also the reason that we can drop all of these kind of nodes and still remain with a 100% crit chance. So that we don't have to get into stuff like this. Love of God, the only thing that matters is just getting a crit Hatred Watcher's Eye. Preferably with as maximum a roll as you can get. The other roll on it doesn't matter. Like I had a rather nice Hatred Watcher's Eye with the flash charges thing. Once I realized that they didn't stack, which is kind of an oversight on GGG's part, they could still have them stack but not be at 100% effectiveness because you've got the flask cooldown recovery thing. So it's kind of sucky that they don't stack because there's an internal cooldown that could fill them up faster. Pardon me, I got stuff in my throat. So that's another reason why we dropped the Hatred Watcher's Eye or whatever. You can still do better. That's the important thing I just want to get over here. So with this gearing, this is pretty optimal. This is in the right direction. Can do better, guys. And if you've got the money, if you've got the currency, please, for the love of God, sell me the gear. Sell me the gear I'm struggling to get. So that's another thing I just wanted to go over with you guys. That is the gear. That was 33 minutes. It's a long time. I know that like me briefly describing it doesn't quite put it into action. I hope you guys can understand why we make these choices. This is how we get our defenses, by balancing out our offense and our defense, by getting accuracy in areas that need it. Probably the little thing I just want to leave you with is just the idea of this. To make a build truly work in all scenarios, you got to ask yourself, how many affixes am I giving up for how much power creep? By giving myself 100% accuracy through just one accuracy rating here, and not needing to lose a gem slot here, I gain 30% multi, 7% more maximum life, and attack speed. Through one swap. A lot of people are like, oh, but you know, you could just use the Tempest Jewel. I'm like, why lose all of that for one jewel when I could get one affix? I lose one suffix, and I gain all that. These are the trade-offs that people need to think about, and this is permanent. This is unconditional. Regardless of the map modifier knocking these down, I have this. I have this no matter what. I get 7% more life. Minimum, I get 10% more multi, you know what I mean? So when you multiply them together or whatever. And I get that attack speed no matter what. Can be divine better, by the way. This is permanent. That's the thing people got to realize. So that is more than a fair trade-off. I lose 20% pen for a Pandemonious. I can potentially roll 10% here. But I gain permanent leech, I gain permanent bone chill, I gain triple balanced wise oak, I get myself a zealotry aura, and zealotry is 16% more damage. I don't know why it's not letting me, yeah. And then I gain zealotry, which is just 16% more damage at all times. It gets me a consecrated ground, which gives me more regen, which gives me a whole bunch of other benefits. It allows me to use a different Watcher's Eye if I so feel the need. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of crazy decisions you have to make, and it's the one that not a lot of streamers or people that make build guides are doing, is balancing out their stuff. And this build in particular benefits a tremendous amount from balance. I know this is a long video, guys. I've said it a million times and I'm sorry about repeating myself, but I just really want to explain to you why this build works and why a lot of other people are struggling and they've invested, unfortunately, insane amounts of currencies. So hopefully that explains the gearing side of things. Links will be in the POB for the actual gear I've got, plus the desired gear. So I'm going to have the comparison gear there for you to go through. Little notes and stuff like that are how you can optimize your tree to, like, you know, you can go up this way if you need more strength. You can drop these, get 1 point into this, and or you could just put 2 points in an extra AoE if you feel the need for increased damage. None of these things are wrong. If you need more resistances, you can get them here. The tree is in a really optimal spot for a lot of things. By the way, if you really want, I haven't bothered divining this yet, but like you can get things like more increased movement speed, and you could get it in the quick recovery section. You could probably get some nice jank stuff here, like you obviously don't want poison, but you could get movement speed here, 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 and you could optimize around that. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You can make these changes. The points are movable. Like I said, when I showed you the POB before, I didn't have my full 100 tree. I just picked this stuff because I can. You could optimize this more. Like maybe you want to get strength somewhere, you know, somewhere besides here. Maybe you've triple balanced out your Wise Oak without the need for using the resistance multipliers, and you want to go use the attribute multiplier on this, which means that you can drop needing the strength points here. So like you can drop this, you can just go through here, you can drop this because you don't need the strength at all, and then you could put it into I don't know, man, these hybrid nodes over here, whatever you want. You could get more multi here and movement speed. Say you don't have enough multi. There's a lot of chopping and changing you can do. Very flexible, but it all relies on the unison of your gear to your tree and how you've gone about speccing it. This is undoubtedly, to me, the most balanced tree in terms of defenses and offenses. It's taken into account the new Atlas, taken into account how all multipliers work, what can and can't be nerfed. You're going to end up with a solid tree, man. This probably won't get nerfed. You know what I mean? Like, takes into account your cooldown recovery and how all that stuff works. It's fantastic synergy. Hopefully you guys take something away from this. You know what I mean? Especially the thing about multipliers and how they actually work in actual application. Okay, so that's that done. Alright, next thing. Gems. Let's go over gems and links. We're back in the POB. Fixed it up again. Where is it? Skills. Okay. Now to explain the setups for you. I suppose the big thing we want to go over first is the main damage setup and why I pick this stuff. Okay. Awaken cast on crit. Do not use this if you do not have that cooldown recovery. We've been over this. Hypothermia versus Awaken added cold. Okay, I'm just going to explain this to you as best I can. We've already gone over this a lot, so I'm just going to try and make this short and sweet. Hypothermia is more damage. Yep. That's why a lot of people like to use it. Look, man, my POB, it's so big, it's so huge. Yet again, if I unclick this, look what happens to your damage. You are essentially on a 5-link. I don't know why anyone wants to play this game, okay? This is... I've already been over this. In all scenarios, my damage is higher because I do not rely on this. So, in summary, you just want to unclick this, right? And just put in Awaken Added Cold. It is 7% less damage as a more multiplier, or whatever you want to call it. However, you gain consistency and AoE. Don't ask me why you get the AoE from the increased levels. +1 level to Socketed Cold Gems gives you more AoE. Works even better in unison yet again with your Carcass Jack. So there's a nice little side piece of information for you, just so you know. The more levels you get on Ice Nova, the bigger the actual AoE is. That's fantastic. It actually works really, really well, especially with how we do our build. Hypothermia, on the other hand, does not. Even a 21 Hypothermia. For all the extra damage you would get, it's inconsistent, it doesn't give increased AoE, which means less overlaps, which ultimately to me just means it's more annoying. Okay, next thing we want to get rid of, Inspirational. Okay, Inspiration, I suppose you could take away from it that in the event that you have charges, it's 35% more damage. Very, very similar to this one, right? Thing is though, right, to get this to work, and we've discussed this before, you need to at least be spending mana. It's very specific that you need to be spending mana. This is almost instantly going to make it so that you cannot run no regen map mods. Minimum, your Cyclone's going to cost you 5 mana per second. Let's say we be nice about this and we go, okay, I'm going to grab 2 rings, right, to get this thing down. Or you're going to either just use 1 ring, right? And what you're going to want to do is you're going to go -3 to channeling skills and then -1, or maybe you're just gonna have -3 so that your mana cost will be down to either 2 or 1. You know what I mean? So my one currently costs 0. So you have it down to 2 or 1. So you still need mana to cast. If at some point on those maps you like to use your flame dash, right, and then you go to 0 mana, it's gonna feel jank. It's gonna immediately feel jank. So there are times, even when you got like 1 mana cost per thing. Another thing too you're going to have to add is you got to have a way to get mana back. Say you're on a hexproof map, hexproof and no regen, cannot run it. It's not just you miss your flame dash, you can't attack, which means you're going to die, which for me is a big no-no. So instantly when you get that combination of mods, you've now limited yourself. Big no-no, okay? So let's say we try and work around that and we have a ring like I used to have. I think I actually have this in-game still because I actually didn't get rid of it. So I tried using something like this, where I got mana gain for each enemy hit by your spells. This thing can roll up to 3. It was awful. It was awful, because then you have to be hitting an enemy. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever seen how quickly your mana can go down, but like, here it is here. There we go. It goes down rather rapidly, even at ultra low mana cost, right? If you're not hitting something for like, I'm talking, say you flame dash, you instantly kill an enemy and you spin that little bit after, and you lose this thing, even at, what is this currently? Where's my cyclone? 2 mana cost per second. That will go down insanely quick, especially if you have such a small mana pool, like I do right here. If you do this, you're going to die on no regen. And you need, I've tested it before as well, I tested it with the jewel. You actually see I've got it in here somewhere. Where's my inspiration? I think I might have just deleted it. Oh no, there it is. Okay, so I tested it with inspiration from level 1 all the way up to level 18, and then I decided this was not worth it. The only time you would use this is if you are having trouble with crit multi, okay? Sorry, not crit multi, your crit chance. This adds a really, really small amount of crit chance, and like I said, you shouldn't be relying on this at all. If you build the way I build, you are not going to have a problem with crit chance. Matter of fact, you're going to have too much crit. A silly amount, but I have it like that so that like when I run reflect maps, I want to leave nothing to chance. Absolutely nothing to chance. Anyway, so that's why we don't use inspiration. Inspiration, also a bad link. Awakened Elemental Focus. Could use this. Not going to fault anyone for using this. This is a lot of damage. A fantastic amount of damage. If you decide to go down the route of having increased critical strike chest piece or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you want to go for an explodey crit chest, you can drop this, add LE focus, and then because we're not building into thingo, you could literally afford to drop the Ami. You could just get a pure damage Ami, and sorry, where is it? And then you can put Life Leech on your Cosprey, sorry. Yeah, so we have Life Leech here as another option. You can get your Life Leech from that, and then you can use the Ami. So, super worth mentioning that you can do this, and you will actually have more damage, and it will be consistent damage, but then you will never be able to shatter. Now, a lot of people should know by now, shattering is amazing. It is so good for delve, it is not funny. It is one of the reasons why we can delve at depths, pardon me, 650 plus, or probably all the way to 700 or 800 or something along those lines, along with our defenses. But shatter is what makes it easy, because then I'm not worrying about those wetters exploding. The amount of times I died to DD is not funny. Obviously, if you have an explodey chest, that is the exception. So the only way to beat this is to drop your damage a little bit for more consistent crit, and go explodey chest, and then land a double corrupt. To those people that want to go down that route, I say good luck. Good luck to you, sir. If you can get that, fantastic. If you can't, don't use it. Absolutely do not use it. Like, you want to be able to shatter. Shatter is an amazing thing. It's not only defensive, it's also pretty cool offensively. It's like nice. It makes your build super comfortable. So that is why in our main damage setup, we don't use LE Focus, Awakened one anyway. We don't use Inspiration, and we don't use Hypothermia. You lose 7% more damage. You know what I mean? And then we're using increased critical strikes. You can see everything else here. Conk effect, a lot less painful. Pardon me. It's a lot less painful on this build in particular, because obviously we get increased AoE. We build with a Carcass Jack, so this all works in great unison with our current setup. Auras. Pretty much ignore this thing right here, because obviously POB, and I'm pretty sure POB Fork as well. I don't use POB Fork, by the way, but it doesn't have our actual amount of mana reserved on here. So this is with Sovereignty. You need Sovereignty to get the extra auras in. But on top of that, you also need that new Hatred. Hatred has reduced mana reservation by 25%. So in-game, you need this this modifier. Pardon me, I'm getting kind of tired now. Been doing videos all day. Anyway, You need this. This is the only thing that matters. Get the Hatred has reduced mana reservation. That's how we squeeze in all our auras. Having all these auras is better than having curses. It's better than not having them. It's better than Pandemonious. For the love of God, stop using Pandemonious. It ain't worth the price tag. It's a good placeholder. From now on, so long as there's no way around those map modifiers, those items should take a big hit. I don't know why they're as expensive as they are. Granted, at the start of the league, I wasn't aware of this myself, so obviously we all fell into the old trap. It was overhyped, overpriced. Now that we do know how the new map multipliers work and stuff like that, and how they actually work in practice, people need to change their thinking. Update your thinking to understand that these are no longer the best. Difference between Herald of Ice and Zealotry is like suddenly saying 13%. What have we done wrong? I don't actually think this is adding my damage. Ah, it's because it... Okay. Well, this is unfortunate. So POB isn't... Hold on a second. Oh, no. My bad. Okay, now I know why. Okay, so this one is 5% multi. This one is obviously 16. 10% more damage, and you lose the shatters. The shatters don't... sorry, you don't lose the shatters, but you also gain the consistency of crit, which isn't discussed on this POB, but like you get a lot more from this than you think. Zealotry is a lot better. You also get Consecrated Ground. Just remember that's extra regen. It's really good. You have this always on bosses and everything. So just understand that. Much, much, much better. We also have a 21, so putting that out there. We actually have a bit more damage yet again. Another thing I have to fix on the POB. I'll eventually have a really updated version of this, I swear, guys. But anyway, this is what we want. You need an Enlightened level 4. You need... you don't need an Enlightened level 4 on the Helm, which is the next thing we can go over. On the Helm, yeah, okay. I like portals. I hate using TP scrolls. You should know this by now. I'm going to squeeze this in. Flame Dash. We also have 20% on this. This works in unison really, really well with the fact that we stack cooldown recovery. So this cooldown recovery speed, along with our other cooldown recovery speed, Flame Dash is up more than a Whirling Blades. It's better than a Leap Slam. We don't need to pair it with more faster attack, despite the fact that we have a good amount of attack speed on this build. It's not as good as Flame Dash. Like, Flame Dash is instant. It works off of our CDR. This is much, much better. Flesh and Stone. I shouldn't really have to explain this, but I'm going to anyway. If you're relying on Pandemonious for blind, be prepared to die on those map mods where you just don't get blind. So not only do we have our dodge chance, we have blind. It is permanent with this, and in the event that something is outside of the range of our Flesh and Stone, we also then take less damage from them. This stacks with our other forms of less mitigation. We actually end up with about 39% mitigation at all times from our Mistwalker, from our Maraketh Jewel, or whatever it is, whatever jewel we have, our Timeless Jewel, and then add Flesh and Stone on. So we're just going to go to the calculator real quick. I'm going to show you this. So we have 11% from this, we have 8% from being an assassin, so your Mistwalker. Doesn't get calculated here. 8% reduced damage taken. Reduced damage across the board. So we're just going to go +8. You always have elusive up. Not a big controversy right here. We then have the Windwalker. I'll show you in game, so you guys can just understand this. At least for the first hit, 20% less damage taken if you haven't been hit recently. We have a lot of entropy. Like I said, we've got 60% chance to dodge. We got 50% chance to dodge spells. This is stacked with our elusive buffs. With the fact that we're a very mobile character and we kill everything instantly, you are very, rarely going to take hits. So then we're just going to go +20%, right? That's not including our flask. We have a Bismuth flask on top of this, whatever it is. Basalt flask, my bad. So 15% reduced from physical right there. Have triple balance Wise Oak, so even less damage taken right there, so more mitigation. We also have our Helm, which is 10% less damage taken, but I'm not going to include any of that. Baseline, you have 40% mitigation, basically. That's baseline. That's what everyone's going to have. Minimum, you have this if you built it even remotely similar. If you haven't triple balanced your Wise Oak or you don't have your flask up, you have this. That's huge for defense. People are really, 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 really underrating that. We're going to get into our next part. This is why I could take a Shaper Slam and not die. So the next thing we're going to go over, next thing we're going to go over here on our links is, so I'm pretty sure I've discussed all that. God forbid you actually need to swap that up a little bit. Defense, Steel Skin, cast when damage taken. Such a simple thing to have, right? Think of this as In the event that we do get hit, we have a 2.4k buffer. That is so nice. I'm just going to put this in the calculator for you. So we're going to go to the calculator. I always have 6.1k life. And you can get much higher than this, by the way. So we got 6,100. I'm going to plus that 700 right there. You don't always have this, but I kind of do. So it's a nice buffer in the event that you do take a hit. So we get 6.1k right there. 6.8, sorry. And then when we do get hit, in the event that we do get hit, mitigation completely aside, right? We get an extra 2.4k, basically EHP on top of that. So we're going to go plus 2,400. 9,200 life in the event that we get hit, not including mitigation. That's a lot. Okay, guys? That is a lot. And you've seen the amount of damage we have. This is why we don't take many hits. And I'm also going to show you another little thing which makes this so much better, especially in particular with this build. So these things have internal cooldown. So like once this thing pops, you got 4 seconds before you can take that kind of damage again. That is affected by our cooldown recovery, which is actually why I got a 21-23, by the way. So immediately after we get hit, right? Where is it? Over here, Steel Skin goes for a full 4 second cooldown. This is then mitigated by the fact that we stack cooldown recovery. This is up every single 2 seconds. If you look up there on the cooldown time, 2.1 seconds. It's affected by this cooldown recovery. It's affected by this cooldown recovery. It is so nice to have this, okay? So it's a pretty underlooked thing, pretty underutilized. We have a great deal of cooldown recovery. It is so nice, in particular on this build. Every 2 seconds, we have 9.6k life. We barely get hit every 10 seconds, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a thing. So I hope you guys really take this into account when you're doing your gemming. Steel Skin doesn't look great on other people's, paper. It's why we even go out of our way for strength. It's why we use an amber amulet, so that we don't have to take the 1 point here. Small optimization. Do what you want with it, but I always think to myself, what else would you possibly put there? If you're going for an amulet, try and get it on an amber amulet base. If you can't get one, maybe they don't exist or something like that, because Lord knows I'm buying up that market trying to get a perfect one. That's pretty much the deal. You know what I mean? Like, you can't get much better than this. Also remind yourself that the modifiers that I'm after don't exist in POB. My numbers are actually much higher than this. Yours, might vary, but just keep that in mind. So, another optimization there. I'm pretty sure we've already discussed how the Koshbreeze work. I discussed that before. You already get it. Make sure that your Ice Nova is on its own. Yet again, don't use Hypothermia. Use Awakened Cold Pen or Added Cold, but go to setup. You got 39 on this, 29 on this. I know people like Pen. We've got a lot of Pen already. Pen is unaffected by a lot of modifiers. Neither is this. Use this. Get Awakened Cold. Awakened Cold is criminally underrated. And the people that do rate it obviously understand how good it is. Don't be like me. Get a 21. I don't even have quality on my one, so should just do that. I'm just lazy. Long story short, you can get even more damage than me. Each one of these is 200k a proc, and it's every 1.5 seconds. Add that onto that damage we had before, man. Add that onto the damage we had before. Also, the crit right here goes up to 89%. I don't actually like this. There's another optimization I could show you guys later, or if you come to the Twitch chat channel, I'll show you exactly what it is. But basically, if I get perfect Koshbreeze, and I mean perfect, with like a double corrupt on it, you will see what I'm aiming for, and then we'll get 100% crit at all time. So you never have to worry about this kind of flimsy one. This doesn't actually take into account Assassin's Mark, don't ask me why. But long story short, here's what the Vortex setup would look like if you, for some reason, didn't have this optimal setup. Kind of ignore it, it's whatever. I'm just going to save this, I don't know why. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything you need to know about the gems. This is why we do the links. This is why we swap out all that other stuff. I've sort of kept in the POB the other swaps that I would make. Hopefully you understand why and when to make those. Like, if you don't have any form of life leech, have this. Another thing I want you guys to really look out for in other people's POBs is the fact that they generally don't have some form of leech. Like, if you're relying on Warlord's Mark and you go into a hexproof map, boo, bad build, you know what I mean? Like, just don't fall for these traps, guys. You should have some form of leech. It makes life easier. You should have some form of mitigation or entropy or anything like that. So you see the guys without phase acro and they're like, I've got 7k life but no acro. Yikes, dog. You're going to die so often. Ugh, yuck. So not only do we have these normal defenses at all times, we also have them with defenses. You know what I mean? So like defense and offense. Balance is everything, guys. Hopefully you guys learn a little bit something from this yet again. Yeah, I think that's everything I need to discuss for gem links. Obviously as well, our Koshbrees are affected by our cooldown recovery, so the more of that, yet again, the better. What else could I possibly talk about? That's the main damage setup. Yep, that's everything. Alright guys, so hopefully you understand why we build these things. These things can't be mitigated. That is gems explained. I think that's everything for the build. The last thing I'm going to go over is how enjoyable is the build, and pretty much my feelings and my conclusions for this build. I'll hopefully try and make that under 10 minutes. My final thoughts. I love the build. It was kind of like a perfect project for me, you know, something I could really sink my teeth into. There was a lot of correcting things to do. Getting 100 was so much fun, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like so many times I hit like a point where I was just like, oh man, I can't do this really well. I was worried I couldn't do Awakener. I was worried maybe I wouldn't be able to do the new bosses when I heard about their new life pools. Because I had gone from the previous knowledge we had to like what would be necessary to push the build in this case. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll only do that with like perfect gear. Not necessarily true. By updating my thought process to how the new Atlas works, how the new map modifiers work, getting rid of like that mindset of like chill and all these other things that can now be, you know, negated and stuff like that, and really just sort of understanding how breakpoints worked, it made the build super fun. I think the take-home note for people in this would be like, this thing has fantastic clear, it has fantastic bossing, it can do all map mods. It is, for lack of a better word, a perfectly balanced build. Maybe not min-maxed to perfection the way I would have liked to, but hopefully in the future people see this build guide and go, okay, this is the gear I'm going for, and someone hits that perfect amulet, someone hits, you know, those perfect gloves, someone hits all these perfect, you know, gear that I was looking for, and someone just smashes it out of the park, and hopefully, you know, they get lucky. And if more people are going for the build the way I did, I'm sure we'll have much more success, and we'll be able to take those POB numbers, and then we'll be able to be, you know, warriors ourselves. Hopefully, POB gets updated, or POB forked, to actually have the new modifiers as well, the ones I'm after. And hopefully someone just, you know, takes this build, or at least the foundation I've now built as a different way of building Ice Nova, and hits the ground running, and just takes it all the way. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I'm going to keep trying. I just don't think I'm going to get lucky enough. I don't have those kind of currency, that kind of resources to just keep burning money infinitely. I've got other projects I would like to move on to. I've put, you know, a month and a half into this build before I made the build guide, because I wanted to be ultra sure. I tested out a lot of different things. I tested out like the very, very hybrid version where you can get like 2.6k ES and 6k life, and I took that and min-maxed it, and it still had the problem of inconsistency. Plus, for that extra, you know, 1k EHP you got from it, you would actually kind of lose it in mitigation, and mitigation is, for lack of a better word, better. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that really synergize well. Anyway, I'm going to try and not get too off topic here. Overall thoughts of the build is, this is a really, really fantastic build. It doesn't need to be min-maxed. You guys don't need all the double corruptions and stuff like that I had for this build to work. You can dial it back by a lot, and it's still like a, probably like, you could probably throw 50 exalts at it, you know what I mean? You're going to need about that. A lot of it's going to come from your Watcher's Eye. Koshbrees are really cheap. If you want, you can get it working with a Pandemonius. The necklaces are incredibly cheap to craft yourself. Like, you can quite literally buy one of those necklaces with the 1 modifier on it for 5C in current PoE times. Like, so just to show you how underrated those things are. Pretty heavily underrated. Actually, I've just forgot that the you're going to need the Enlighten, so that's going to cost you 10x if you don't get scammed as well. So maybe take the caveat, maybe 50x is what your budget should be. Sounds like a lot on paper. I don't know, for me, had I known what I know now, I could have made this build a lot cheaper. There's a lot of growing pains. I bought a lot of stuff that was unnecessary. But I have had a lot of fun with this build, man, and we'll continue to keep playing the League with this build. I don't want to make another character till the end. I'm going to get better at speed running the start of the game. I'm going to keep testing a couple more things here and there. Like one of my viewers brought up the idea of using Spore Guard. It's actually kind of not a bad idea, but it has a lot of inconsistency problems, which, in case you haven't realized by now, I hate inconsistencies. I hate the idea that, like, some people like to buff up their numbers by going, oh, I have a Val Righteous Fire at all times, so therefore that's my actual POB damage. If you see that, that's another thing to look out for. when they mix it in with like, I have a Vile Righteous Fire at all times and stuff like that. It's a one-off damage thing. Everything works in immunity phases. You will not have that damage, so pay attention to these things, guys. Like, if you want raw numbers, raw damage, like, unclick as much stuff as you can, as reasonable, and just see what your actual damage is, guys. Can't stress it to you enough, and it'll pay dividends. It really, really will, guys. Like, having consistent real damage and showing those numbers to other players and how you actually achieve them, and having it in all scenarios is what makes a build feel great. And I mean feel great, and that's a really, really important thing. So the fun factor for this is over the top. The clear speed for this build is fantastic and can get better than what you've seen on screen, by the way. Like, if I had those frozen boots, like I said, I could go for a much, much faster Quicksilver, and that makes a ginormous difference yet again to the feel and the clear speed, but it's already fine. Bossing was amazing, like, everything was just amazing on this build, and I had so much fun balancing everything out and finding out how to do this. It honestly feels like a new build to me, personally, and it just feels so much better than when I was playing those other builds, and getting it 100 was another fantastic thing for me. I really enjoyed it. Another learning experience there. I think another thing I want to mention right at the end is I've originally promised you guys a Headhunter variant of it. I'm going to go back on that right now and just tell you this. Headhunter does not scale very well with Cast on Crit Ice Nova. Obviously, you don't get any extra damage out of it. You lose the ability to get the new, basically the new crit cap and a whole bunch of other things. You lose a lot of stuff to gain like a little bit of haste and some awful modifiers. It's not worth it. You know what I mean? Like, you lose too many things. Okay. Long story short, you do just lose too many things. It's great for mapping, great for map clear speed. It completely dies. I obviously invested it. That's where I sold a lot of the money. Sold my Headhunter and everything. I do not recommend it. If you want, 100% go follow Cute Dog's guide for a cast on crit. I do believe it was it's not Ice Nova. Ethereal Knives. That scales with Headhunter. That is fantastic. He makes fantastic builds for Headhunter. I do not recommend the Headhunter variant of Ice Nova. I'm sorry, guys. Like, I know I looked into it. I did try it. It was actually worse than my current Ice Nova. I died more. The extra speed I gained wasn't worth it. The fact that I had to invest in every map, otherwise every map felt like poop, for lack of a better word, means that it's just not optimal, guys. Like, you just want a build that you can just hop on after a long day of work, hold down right click and do everything. And that's what this build is. And I mean everything. And you're probably not going to die even if you're a bad player. I'm an awful player, and even I do everything deathless. I've done every single piece of content in the game deathless, and I did it first try. On a lot of those videos you'll see me get the achievements. I literally waited till the end of the game to do them. So all I'm going to say is, guys, this is a fantastic build. I hope you guys try it out. I hope you guys take away some knowledge from this build, and ultimately I hope you give it a try. It's a really, really fun build. Have a good day, guys. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. You know the deal. If not, follow me on Twitch, or just do whatever you want. Just, if you can, pass on the knowledge about how this build works and all the things you've learned. Hopefully you've learned something, and yeah, have fun.